They're free to leave if they want. And if they want to leave, that's fine. And if they want to stay, that's fine. But the people have to know. And politicians can't be afraid to take them on. A politician that hears somebody where we're at war with al-Qaeda and sees somebody talking about how great al-Qaeda is, pick out her statement. That was Omar. How great al-Qaeda is. When you hear that, and we're losing great soldiers to al-Qaeda, when you see the World Trade Center gets knocked down, and you see the statements made about the World Trade Center, all the death and destruction, I'll tell you what, I'm not happy with them. And it's very easy to be saying, oh, gee, well, it's okay. If weak politicians want to say, and the Democrats in this case, if they want to gear their wagons around these four people, I think they're going to have a very tough election, because I don't think the people of the United States will stand for it. John, go ahead, John.
Does it concern you that tweet was seen as racist? Lindsey Graham said, encouraged you to aim higher, and does it trouble you?
No, he didn't say about that. He just said, don't go. See, I disagree with Lindsey. These are congressmen. What am I supposed to do? Just wait for senators? No. These are four. So I disagree with Lindsey on that. That was the only thing. He said, aim higher, shoot higher. What am I going to do? Wait till we get somebody else in a higher position, a higher office? These are people that hate our country. Hey, John, they hate our country. They hate it, I think, with a passion. Now, it's possible I'm wrong. The voter will decide. But when I hear the way they talk about our country, when I hear the anti-Semitic language they use, when I hear the hatred they have for Israel and the love they have for enemies like al-Qaeda, then you know what? I will tell you that I do not believe this is good for the Democrat Party. Certainly it's not the party that I've known over the years.
Citizens, Mr. President, where should they, Mr. President, where should they, Mr. President?
Does it concern you that many people saw that tweet as racist, and that white nationalist groups are finding common cause with you on that point?
It doesn't concern me because many people agree with me. And all I'm saying, they want to leave, they can leave. Now, it doesn't say leave forever. It says leave if you want. But what it says, what that says is, if they're not happy with the United States, if they're doing nothing but criticizing us all the time, you see these people walking down criticizing the United States. We just hit the highest stock market in history. All of these incredible manufacturers that are in, these are great business people. They employ many people, and we have workers with us too. They're having the best year they've ever had. Can I say that? Is that a correct statement? So, and they're hiring more people than they've ever had, and more people are making a good living than they've ever had. We just hit 27,000 plus on the Dow. It's the highest the stock market has ever been. And you have to go by the election, because the market started going up the day after I won. You know, they like to add all of that tremendous gain. They like to try and give it to Obama. The fact is, if I would have lost, the stock market would crash. And if these people that I watch in those debates ever got their hands on the United States government, 401ks, the values of your company, everything else that we talk about we're so proud of, it's down the tubes. People will lose their money. They'll lose their wealth. You'll have a crash like you've never seen before. And I'm really good at this stuff. I know what I'm talking about. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Where should they go, Mr.
All right, you've been listening here to President Trump. Let's listen again.
People came into our country illegally. Many were felons. Many were convicted of crimes. Many were taken out on Sunday. You just didn't know about it. In fact, I spoke to the head of ICE. I spoke to a couple of people. We had many people. It was a very successful day, but you didn't see a lot of it because it was done a lot. You'll speak to them. And I'm not even sure they should be telling you, but it was a lot. And it wouldn't have to be Sunday. We've been doing this. Look, we have been removing MS-13. They're monsters. We've been removing MS-13 by the thousands. during my administration. And I tell my people, it's much easier to go the other route. But I say, focus on the criminals. Focus on the people that are killing people, that are causing crime. Focus on them. Much easier just to go to general population. That's easy. But I don't do it the easy way. We're getting tremendous numbers of criminals. And yesterday, it was just reported to me before I walked, because I said, how did that go yesterday? It didn't have to start yesterday. The truth is, it started a number of days before yesterday, but yesterday was very successful. People come into our country illegally, and they go out legally. Every person taken out had papers, and we had court orders. Okay, thank you.
All right, you've been listening to President Trump there insisting that he's not concerned by people who say that his recent racist tweets are racist. He said many people agree with me. He says the 4 congresswomen of color that he's been targeting should leave the U.S. if they don't like it here. Sunday, he called for what was clearly these 4 freshman congresswomen to return to their home countries. President Trump was referring to New York's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley from Massachusetts, Minnesota's Ilhan Omar, and Michigan's Rashida Tlaib. When he tweeted this, he said, so interesting to see progressive Democrat congresswomen who originally came from countries whose governments are a complete and total catastrophe, now with loudly and viciously telling the people of the United States how our government is to be run. Why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came? Now, 3 of these 4 women were born in America, and Ilhan Omar has been an American citizen since she was a teenager. This morning, after Democrats, including Speaker Pelosi, who recently has been at odds with the 4, came to their defense and called the president racist. Then today, the president responded, quote, if Democrats want to unite around the foul language and racist hatred spewed from the mouths and actions of these very unpopular and unrepresentative congresswomen, it will be interesting to see how it plays out. And just moments ago, similarly, he defended himself.
What are you talking about in your tweet about going back to their home?
Well, I didn't mention names, and I didn't do that, but I will tell you, with our country, and I think everybody in this audience, these are great manufacturers, great workers in our audience, too. They brought a lot of their workers here. If you're not happy here, then you can leave. As far as I'm concerned, if you hate our country, if you're not happy here, you can leave. And that's what I say all the time. That's what I said in a tweet, which I guess some people think is controversial. A lot of people love it, by the way. A lot of people love it. But if you're not happy in the U.S., if you're complaining all the time, very simply, you can leave. You can leave right now. Come back if you want. Don't come back. It's okay, too. But if you're not happy, you can leave.
Well, let's go to Boris Sanchez now. He is at the White House. Tell us more, Boris, about this defense.
Yeah, Brianna, the 3rd annual Made in America Day took a dark turn on the South Lawn of the White House just a few moments ago. President Trump with this outburst defending these racist tweets that he sent out yesterday, attacking these 4 progressive congresswomen. He didn't mention their names yesterday. Today, he specifically went after one of them. That's Representative Ilhan Omar. The president saying that she is anti-Semitic, that she hates Jews, that she hates Israel, and that she puffs her chest out when she talks about Al-Qaeda. And the president was also asked about whether he was concerned that some of the language that he uses in these tweets may appeal to white supremacists, if it may be indicative of some kind of support for their beliefs. The president saying that he's not concerned about any links to white supremacy, essentially denying the fact that he has made many remarks in the past that are racist and blatantly xenophobic. The president then went on to talk about the planned ICE raids just a couple of weeks ago. He said that millions of people would be deported. Today he said that he had spoken with some of the heads in his administration handling these raids, and that they would not give an official number to the public of how many people were deported. But ultimately, the president going back to this theme of race and his discussions over these 4 progressive women, saying that they should leave the United States if they don't like it. Notably, the president doesn't say the same thing about other Congress people who have been critical of him and his administration, and who often are critical of American policy. People like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, people who he is not told to go back to their countries, Brianna.
All right, Boris Sanchez at the White House, thank you so much. I want to bring in professor and author Michael Eric Dyson. We have Gloria Borger with us, our CNN chief political analyst and Politico congressional reporter Rachel Bade. Michael, first to you. What do you think of what you have been witnessing really since yesterday with the tweets and now the president not really defending himself so much as standing by what he said? He said people agree with him.
Right. Well, he's a demented political genius. Let's give it to him. He at once plays to his base and to the basest instincts in American society. The xenophobia, the racism, the misogyny of collecting these women together to knock them down like a kind of political piñata, beating at them. It's ridiculous. And what's even more ridiculous is that we don't hear an outcry from other Republicans who know better, who have more humane sensibilities, who understand that, look, it is a contact sport to be involved in politics, and the president plays them with ultimate panache and hurtful vigor. But at the end of the day, we are all Americans. To demonize them, the way he did Barack Obama, the way he called into question Kamala Harris, now he's calling into question the identity, the citizenship of these people. We can disagree without trying to otherize our fellow American citizens and try to portray them as enemies of the state. This is vicious, it's deleterious, and it calls for the conscience of the Republican Party to come forward and to say enough is enough.
They're not coming forward.
No, they are cowards as well.
There is clearly a fear about saying, there's clearly a belief on the part of the Republican Party that some Americans whose votes Republicans rely on do agree with the president, as he stated. He's being partisan here. You said misogyny. He's being sexist. He's being racist here. It is wrong what he is saying. It is divisive. And yet there seems to be this inability to say something. So what do you make of that?
Well, what I make of that is all along we hear the cry, oh no, everybody who supports Donald Trump is not racist. Show it, prove it. And if people are afraid to speak out because they fear that base is the kind of, substrata that supports that party, then you've got to at least come out of the closet, so to speak, and admit these are racist sensibilities. And anybody who protects them, anybody who defends them, anybody who suggests that they are not worthy of immediate reproach and immediate rebuff is in league with and complicit with these kind of racist, sexist, and anti-American beliefs. This is anti-patriotic to me.
It's also part of a political strategy. It's clearly orchestrated here that let's look at what has occurred in recent days. You've had the threats of mass roundups of illegal immigrants, and you heard the president just talk about that just now. The president hosted right-wing social media, and he thought that was a great success. You've had the challenge on the citizenship question, on the census. So, this doesn't come out of thin air here. This is a president, and you said you got to hand it to him in his own way, who knows exactly what he is doing. And by challenging these four women, he is saying they represent the Democratic Party. And there's a fight in the Democratic Party going on, and you could argue that he inserted himself and sort of stopped that cold, which might be good for the Democrats. But he is also trying to say, they're the leaders of the Democratic Party, when of course they are not. And so he knows what he's doing here.
I think. See, what you just said is all true.
Yeah.
But it doesn't absolve us of the necessity to call it for what it is.
I agree.
It is a political strategy that is racist, that is sexist, that is misogynistic, that is xenophobic.
They're not mutually exclusive.
They're not mutually exclusive, and they're reinforcing, and you're going to name every element of that.
But it is also unusual, not for President Trump, but in politics, this is pretty unusual. This is the kind of thing that normally for anyone else would just be incredibly surprising. This is a strategy. This is racist. This is not something that is within the norm, no matter how much you cite a bunch of data points. But this is still very clearly not within the norm. And when I think of Republicans, Rachel, you're a reporter for the Washington Post, I think of Republicans, some of them are, I'm sure, not identifying with what he's saying, and yet they don't want to say anything.
Yeah, there's definitely this sort of deer in the headlights feeling. I mean, the past 24 hours, or I guess it's less than that now, Republicans have been really slow and pushed back. We are starting to see some come out. Just before the show started, Senator Susan Collins actually asked Trump to take down his tweet saying that it's unacceptable. We saw Will Hurd, a Republican from Texas from a very moderate district, say this is point blank racist and xenophobic. It is not behavior that is becoming of a president. He called it hurtful and politically divisive. I mean, there are some Republicans who are starting to speak out,
Right.
but you're not hearing the Republican leadership.
But
do it.
unacceptable
what is
is
that?
such a euphemism.
Where's Mitch McConnell?
And what does that say to you, Rachel, when you hear those names? Will
Right.
Hurd is in a district
Right.
where, he's the only Republican and it's a huge swath of the border, but that's also a purple district.
It is.
Susan Collins is sort of this old school New England Republican that doesn't exist in so many, very many
Toomey of
places anymore.
Pennsylvania
Right.
has
Right.
been
These,
critical.
these are sort of the usual suspects of people who have a leg to stand on politically who can come out and say something.
That's right. It politically benefits them in their district if they push back against the president. I mean, clearly the political calculus is the number one priority for Republicans right now, and there's a fear that if you come from a far right district where everybody loves the president, that you're going to take heat if you go out there and criticize him. I think that what happened this weekend on the Democratic side is really interesting because the infighting in the Democratic Party, in the House in particular, has been absolutely brutal and ugly. I mean, we saw one of the squad members on Saturday say something about how we don't need any more black faces that don't want to be black voices. And she was specifically talking about members of the Congressional Black Caucus who were standing up for Pelosi, who they were fighting with. So it was getting really bad. And Trump's tweet totally changed everything. Now the conversation is about Democrats versus Trump. Democrats are uniting. We just learned that there's going to be a resolution potentially on the floor this week or next week rebuking President Trump for these tweets over the weekend.
Well, the enemy of my enemies turns out to be my friend. But the problem here is that the Republicans haven't named this specifically for what it is, a malady of racial and gender proportions that is quite epic. And the point you were making, I think, is very clear. That usually, even this kind of thing crosses the line, you're going to get some pushback. The inability for Republicans to find a spine, to say this is wrong. Susan Collins talks about unacceptability. That's your 3-year-old throwing, Cheerios at the television. Racist is what it is. Misogynistic is what it is. Sexist is what it is. Xenophobic is what it is. And we've got to begin to use these words as cudgels and hammers against the viciousness that we see prevailing.
But that's 100% correct. And what Trump is doing here for the Democrats is he's saying, well, if you defend these 4 women, I don't call them communists. Lindsey Graham calls them communists. I don't call them
socialists.
I
Maybe
call
they're
them
communists.
So if you defend them against what I said, then that means you agree with them on everything.
Oh, it's distorted logic.
And
I mean, he can teach a logic class.
It is, but you see what he's doing.
Oh, absolutely.
You see what he's doing.
And brilliantly.
Exactly.
And I was going to, Republicans, they're going to be the good thing about, Democrats would argue, the good thing about this resolution that they're going to be putting on the floor is that not only does it unite them, the Democrats, but it's going to put Republicans on record. So right now we might be sort of pulling teeth to get statements from Republican leadership in the House and in the Senate, but in the House, they're not going to have a choice. They're going to have to vote on this one way or another.
How does this moment in history, how does history judge this moment, do you think?
I think we're going to look back collectively, and not too long from now, and see the inability to find our American compass, right? This is not about simply identity politics, whether you're black or brown or red or yellow or women or if you're gay. It's about how we define what is American. And unfortunately, when people say this is not America, this is American. This has happened before, but it's not America at its best. What about those great voices that call us to conscience, the better angels of our natures? The statesmen and stateswomen in political office who say we rise above narrow, vicious, petty partisan politics to find the American way. This is going to be harshly judged.
Can I just say we've been through this, though? We had Charlottesville, we've had birtherism, we've had Donald Trump calling a Mexican-American judge saying, and Paul Ryan said that was racist and then still supported Donald Trump.
Right.
Hillary Clinton just tweeted, so let's look at what she said. She said, let's not forget why Trump is attacking Democratic women of color in the first place. They brought attention to the inhumane conditions they saw at this administration's detention camps. What will we say to those we imprisoned for seeking safety? What do you think?
I think that is the context of this. The context of this is that you had the vice president going down to the border, and Pamela Brown did a great interview with him where he wouldn't acknowledge what was right in front of his eyes. Right. And these women, we had a hearing last week, were quite emotional, a couple of them. And I think that the president is pushing back on that very strongly. I mean, he punches. And that is exactly what he's doing here. And Republicans, to Rachel's point, Republicans are afraid because he's so popular. They're afraid to take him on. I mean, Paul Ryan could have said that his remarks on Judge Curiel were racist, but as we all know, he then went on and
supported him.
Supported him.
And then afterward, you write a book and a memoir, and you make money off of your reflections of conscience. Now, when you had the position and had the ability to make a difference and use your bully pulpit, look, it is the politics of distraction here. And again, let's acknowledge the political genius of Donald Trump. What do? You throw a hand grenade to distract from the bomb that's blowing up over here, and now we're all talking about that, as opposed to cages and treating young children as animals and people as animals and losing again our American way. It's as I said, it's political dementia, but also a demented genius at its best, and Donald Trump is playing it for all it's worth.
But he's betting in a way that he can shoot the moon, right? He's betting that he can stir up the intensity of those who support him. He's not looking to expand his base here, and he's certainly going to be turning some people off. It's noteworthy that it seems like there's no foil for him that sticks in his craw like women of color. Right. We have seen this repeatedly. Right. This is where it appears he reserves some of his vitriol, his most intense vitriol for. Is this going to have political blowback for him, even if it is working strategically in one capacity?
I mean, I think we saw in the 2018 midterms election that this sort of rhetoric has a consequence for him. I mean, he lost control of the House. Pelosi took over. And, you know, if past is any prologue, that means this could really hurt him in 2020. I mean, when it comes to immigration and, you know, the economy, he's got sort of this fight, he's got this ground to fight on. But this sort of language is going to repel independence. It's going to turn people off, and it's really going to undercut him. I think I want to add one more thing here. We are getting word right now that Texas Democrat Al Green is now talking about forcing the articles of impeachment on the House floor in the next week and a half before they leave for August recess. Wow. So you can just see how much anger and emotion this is really ginning up in the Democratic Party right now.
But unfortunately and tragically, the answer is no. He's not going to pay a price. I think that his base accepts this. Black women are even lower on the totem pole than black men. So he picks on the lowest niche, so to speak, and he goes at that and he hammers at that, and he will not pay a price. White women who are conservative, the 54% of eligible white women who voted for Donald Trump in the last election, are not going to stand up and say, as women, we identify with a fellow woman who's being assaulted, viciously lambasted by a president in sexist terms. And unfortunately and tragically, not only does the Republican Party not have a spine, but the masses of white brothers and sisters who find themselves in league with, or at least contradistinct to this guy, will not stand up and say
Thank you. We have to leave it there. Thank you guys so much. We have a whole lot more on our breaking news here, including reaction from former Republican Governor John Kasich, who is calling on Republicans to speak up against the president. Also, was the president's threat to carry out raids on undocumented immigrants a stunt? He said they happened, but we just didn't see them. We're going to look at that. And Joe Biden unveils his health care plan, one that goes farther than Obamacare, but not as far as Medicare for all. More now on our breaking news. The president defending his racist attacks against 4 congresswomen of color. This overtly racist broadside against these women following the president's move last week to demand that the census include a citizenship question he admits is there to limit the power of communities with large populations of non-citizens. This also comes as he's announced raids by immigration. A couple years ago, he called for the death penalty for the Central Park Five minority youths who were falsely accused of rape. Trump still refusing to believe their innocence now 16 years after they were exonerated. 8 years ago, He tried to delegitimize the election of the nation's first African-American president by publicly questioning whether President Obama was born in the U.S. The Trump presidential campaign kicking off 4 years ago with a racist rant about people from Mexico, calling them murderers and rapists.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
Remember Judge Gonzalo Curiel, who decided against then-candidate Trump in the Trump University case. A Mexican judge, Trump called him. Actually, he's an American judge born in
Killed the person. Heather hired Charlottesville. They showed up in Charlottesville to protest.
Excuse me, they didn't put themselves down as you, and you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
And then there was the Muslim travel ban, the president banning people from, quote, shithole countries, his words. Ahead, I'll be speaking with former Republican Governor John Kasich about how Republicans are mostly not responding. Plus, Joe Biden introducing the public option, the Democratic frontrunner unveiling his health care plan that is different from those of his competitors. In just a few hours, Joe Biden is set to unveil details of his new health care proposal. Today in Iowa, it's being called Obamacare 2.0, and it includes massive new subsidies along with a public option that would allow people to buy into a program that's similar to Medicare. Joining me now is CNN's Arlette Saenz. She's in Des Moines, and here in studio is one of the architects of Obamacare, Dr. Zeke Emanuel. So, Arlette, walk us through Biden's new plan so that we can understand what's in it.
Yeah, Brianna. So for weeks, Joe Biden has been teasing this forthcoming plan, and he's finally putting some flesh onto the bones of what this would look like. And at the center of that is that he would want to enhance and build on Obamacare. But to get into some of the details, Biden's new plan would create a public option that allows American consumers to buy into a Medicare-like program. It also provides massive subsidies to make Obamacare cheaper for people to purchase. And along with that, it would also allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. Now, to get into the public option, this would be a program that would be similar to Medicare. And there are nearly 5 million people in 15 Republican-led states which opted not to expand Medicaid. Those nearly 5 million people would be automatically enrolled in the public option for free. And basically anyone that is unhappy with their insurance can buy into that public option. But Biden also making it clear that he does believe private health insurance should stand. Now, as for the subsidies, those would be provided to all Americans regardless of income to make it cheaper to buy Obamacare through the exchanges. So the campaign estimates that a family of 4 making roughly $110,000 would save $750 a month in their premiums. Now, the entire price tag for this plan is approximately $750 billion. And later today, we're going to be hearing from Joe Biden here in Des Moines as he's talking at an AARP forum, getting into some of the details of this plan, as he's insisting that Obamacare is the way to go and that Medicare for all isn't the answer.
All right, Arlette, thank you so much. So, Zeke, assess this for us as someone who was an architect of Obamacare. This builds on that. It does not dismantle Obamacare in favor of something else like some of the other Democrats are considering. But where do you see the pros and cons of the Biden plan?
Well, first of all, we should make clear that a lot of people have used the word incremental to describe this plan. This is incremental, but it's still a pretty substantial change. And it is an effort to get to closer to universal coverage, over 95, 96% coverage in this country, get more people into a coverage option, whether it's the exchanges or this new public option that would allow people who can't get into anything else a way of getting insurance. And I think that's definitely a good thing. He's also worried about the high deductibles people are paying. So he's doing a technical fix, which is rebasing how you calculate the subsidies so that people can afford a better plan where the total deductibles are on average around $1,300 as opposed to $4,300. And then he's got this trying to make things more affordable. He's got the drug negotiation by Medicare. I would say that one problem I see is that's drug price negotiation for Medicare, but about half of Americans don't have Medicare or the exchanges or a public option. They're in private employer-sponsored insurance, and that so far isn't going to do anything for their drug bill, and I think that might be a gap.
I covered all of the little developments of Obamacare until it was passed by Congress, and I remember some of the opening salvos were talking about tackling cost, and then that went away, and now it was not some coverage was in the end what Democrats aimed for and achieved an increase in that. But cost is what is concerning so many Americans.
Right.
So where is the solution to that?
So that's a really good point. I think if you look at the polls, healthcare is a top issue, and within that, it's really cost. 290 million Americans already have coverage, the vast, vast majority of people, and what they're worried about is affordability. Joe Biden does two things on affordability. One is this Medicare drug negotiation price, and the other is more antitrust enforcement of hospitals that are have local monopolies and raising prices. But it's not a comprehensive cost approach, and I still think there's no Democrat who has really gone out with a comprehensive affordability platform. I do think such a platform would say four things. Drugs has to be one of it, but for the whole country, not just for Medicare. Two, you really have to address hospitals. They have, in local areas, just driven up prices, especially for people who have private insurance. Three, we still have a lot of bureaucracy in our system. A lot of, all of us get these insurance bills, and that's all paperwork, but that's people behind that paperwork that are really driving up prices. Recent estimate that $250 billion in unnecessary costs in that paperwork. And then there's payment change. We need more change of how we pay doctors and hospitals that focus on keeping you healthy, out of the hospital, out of the emergency room, getting you care at home. Those four things, they could really drive prices down substantially. And yet I find it a little surprising that no Democrat has led the charge on affordability, as you point out. We're arguing about coverage. Do we stay with Obamacare or do we go to Medicare for all? But affordability is the secret, I think, thing most Americans are now concerned about.
We'll see more programs, more proposals, and maybe it will include that. Zeke, thank you so much.
No
really
problem.
Appreciate it. Republicans are finally starting to react to the president's racist tweets. I'm going to speak with one who is demanding that his party condemn the president next. More now on our breaking news. President Trump defending his racist tweets aimed at 4 Democratic Congresswomen. Listen.
I'm saying that they're socialists, definitely. As to whether or not they're communists, I would think they might be. But this isn't what our country is about. Nevertheless, they're free to leave if they want. And if they want to leave, that's fine. And if they want to stay, that's fine. But the people have to know. And politicians can't be afraid to take them on.
So far, there has been only a trickle of criticism from Republicans. Former Ohio Governor John Kasich is among those who have spoken out. He is demanding the same from others in his party. What do you want to hear, Governor?
No, I'm not demanding anything from anybody else, Brianna, okay? Here's what I'm saying. Our nation is at a bedrock, a Jewish and Christian tradition. Not that other religions don't matter, because many of them are consistent with the fundamental principles of the Judeo-Christian ethic. What I'm saying is that in that ethic, at the foundation of our country, is to love our neighbor as we expect our neighbor to love us. And this kind of division, go back to where you came from. This kind of rhetoric, this kind of anger, it just begins to erode the very basis of what America is all about. And I not only think about my Republican colleagues who haven't said much yet, we'll see if they'll start to come out, but what about the preachers? What about these right-wing preachers who show up every time he calls? I mean, what do they tell him? This is absolutely wrong. This is not the way that Americans raise their kids. And by the way, just because you might have a few more bucks in your pocket, but in the process of that you lose your soul or you lose your principle, what is that all about? So people say, who loses what? I'll tell you, everyone loses who remains silent when this kind of rhetoric, this kind of division, this kind of an anger gets spouted in our country, particularly by the number one leader of our country. As to what other Republicans can do, that's up to them. But everybody loses when this happens.
You're a member of the GOP.
I'm an American, though, before that.
Of course. If this erodes the American fabric, as you just made the case for. Why are you not demanding that other members of your party take a stand?
Look, I'm demanding that everybody out there who's an American, that they walk away from this language. Why? Because I don't want to play politics all the time, Brianna. Everything's not about what party I'm in. It's about my country. It's about my culture. It's about my family. It's about the next generation. I mean, thinking about just my Republican Party, that's small ball. You see, we see a constant effort here that divides, whether it's the detention centers on the border, the way that we've seen children treated, the way that we go around and try to round people up. This is not just about something that involves the Republican Party. This is about the country. And these kinds of things need to be rejected en masse. And again, the religious leaders who on Sunday morning...
That's my question, Governor. You're saying they need to be rejected. They need to be rejected en masse.
Yeah.
They're not. It's not being rejected en masse.
Yeah, it's sad. That's why I put out my tweet. That's exactly why I've spoken out. I don't like it. You know, sometimes it seems as though politics and an advantage and passing another tax bill sort of outweighs the way that we really want to live. And I think that's unfortunate. And let me tell you, I've held office for a long time. When you remain silent, and I don't expect you to be popping off all the time, but when you remain silent consistently and you look back on your career, you're going to wonder what you were proud of. Now, I don't want to judge how other people are going to think, but I can tell you, when I look back, I'm proud of what I've done. There's going to be people who look back and say, what were you doing when all this rhetoric was out there, giving our kids the wrong lesson? So everybody needs to think about it. Again, I want to go back to the preachers. On Sunday morning, they're always out there preaching, love your neighbor. Okay, well, what about this? What is this about? It's just really, it's a bad thing. I mean, I'm steamed about it because it's fundamental to what it means to be an American. I mean, go back to where you came from. Are you kidding me?
When Senator Graham's response to this is to call these four Democrats communists, but not to address the racist language the president uses. I mean, what is your assessment?
Well, first of all,
how history
I don't run
judges
around
that?
I don't run around trying to call people, communists and they're socialists and they hate America. I mean, you see, this is the road we're on. It's just that one thing leads to another. It started in Charlottesville, and all the time, and the language becomes more and more acceptable. We become immune. We become numb to what's said, and oh, well, that's okay. It's not the time to speak out. So I think, this name calling, where does it leave us at the end? Well, does that mean you have an electoral advantage because you motivated your base? I don't know. I don't know how people are going to react at the polls. I don't know what that's going to mean. But what I do know is that we're losing a little piece of our soul every time we stand back and allow this kind of rhetoric and division and anger to be announced without people pushing back saying, all right, that's enough. Knock it off.
All right. Governor, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to have been here. Thank you, Brianna.
So was the president's threat to carry out raids on undocumented immigrants a stunt? Well, he just responded.
The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer, today at 5 Eastern on CNN.
Hello, I'm Pamela Brown in for Brooke Baldwin on this Monday. Well, the president's racist attacks may be getting a congressional response. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is calling for Republicans to join her party's proposed resolution condemning, quote, the president's xenophobic tweets. And it's happening just as the president denied that the tropes he tweeted against four Congresswomen are racist. What's more, he's actually asking for an apology from the four Democrats he told to, quote, go back and fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came. Now, here was the president just moments ago.
These are people that, in my opinion, hate our country. And all I'm saying that if they're not happy here, they can leave. They can leave. And you know what? I'm sure that there'll be many people that won't miss them. But they have to love our country. They're Congress people. And I never used any names. But these are people, quiet. When I hear the statements that they've made, And in one case, you have somebody that comes from Somalia, which is a failed government, a failed state, who left Somalia, who